Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to thank my good friend, the Chair of the Justice Committee and Member for Hammersmith and Chiswick, for his excellent speech and for securing this debate today. And I am grateful for the opportunity to speak in today's debate. And I declare my interest as Chair of the APPG Miscarriage of Justice. And I welcome the estimate and the commitment from the spending review. But I want to focus my remarks on an area of grave concern: the Ministry of Justice spending on criminal justice, and more specifically, to adequately prevent and correct miscarriages of justice. What is the value of justice if innocent people are still being convicted, imprisoned and left to rot in our criminal justice system? The sad truth is that for all the billions we are debating today, the Ministry is failing in one of its most fundamental duties: to ensure that innocent people are protected from wrongful conviction and supported when the system fails them. Miscarriages of justice are not theoretical, they're real and ongoing, and they destroy lives. Andrew Malkinson, wrongfully imprisoned for 17 years for a crime he did not commit, exonerated last year, but only after a tortuous journey through a system that was more interested in protecting itself than uncovering the truth. Peter Sullivan, wrongfully convicted of murder, spent 38 years in prison before being exonerated only last month. He is a victim of the longest miscarriage of justice involving a living prisoner in British legal history. And these cases expose deep systemic flaws and happened in plain sight. But across the country, we have individuals experiencing criminalisation and injustice without proper recourse. Their names not always making the headlines, but their stories are no less important. Miscarriages of justice are not rare accidents. They are now, sadly, an inevitable consequence of a failing system stripped of its checks and balances. At the heart of that system is the Criminal Cases Review Commission, a body that was designed to be the safety net, to identify where the system had gone wrong and to help innocent people find justice. Yet the CCRC is in crisis. In May, the Justice Select Committee published a damning indictment of the Commission's leadership and performance. It stated that the CCRC had shown, and I quote, a remarkable inability to learn from its own mistakes, and that it had deteriorated significantly in its ability to fulfil its vital function. The committee concluded that root and branch reform is required, and in the clearest possible terms, it found that it was untenable for the current Chief Executive, Karen Kneller, to remain in post. This is not political rhetoric. This is a cross-party committee of this House carrying out its scrutiny function and reaching deeply troubling conclusions. The CCRC's failures come at a terrible cost, not only to those wrongfully convicted, but to public confidence in the rule of law. Every year it fails to identify miscarriages. Innocent people remain behind bars, their lives on hold, or worse, permanently destroyed. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, I also want to acknowledge a step in the right direction. I welcome the appointment of Dame Vera Baird KC as the interim chair of the CCRC. Dame Vera has a long and respected record of championing justice and accountability, and I hope her leadership marks a turning point, and I look forward to seeing real progress made, not just in leadership, but in culture, performance and independence. But for that to happen, the government must take responsibility seriously. Reform cannot come on the cheap. The CCRC must be properly resourced and empowered to do the job it was created to do, because until we properly fund our safeguards, miscarriages of justice will continue, the human cost will remain unbearable and the financial cost unsustainable. I also quickly want to touch on two areas that are critical to justice: legal aid and forensic sciences. Since 2010, funding has been slashed by hundreds of millions, and access to justice and representation is now a postcode lottery. We are seeing the collapse of criminal defence provision across England and Wales. There are now entire areas with no local legal aid solicitors. Disproportionately affects those from marginalised groups, those most vulnerable to miscarriages of justice. And forensic science, once the gold standard, has been fragmented and degraded. A 3-year inquiry set up by the APPG on miscarriage of justice into forensics has recently concluded that the sector is in a graveyard spiral, leading to poor police investigations, increasing unsolved crimes and more wrongful convictions. Evidence shows that our system is continuing to fail, not only to ensure the prevention of miscarriages of justice, but their speedy identification and resolution when they do occur. We support calls for a full national audit of forensic provision to assess the urgent support needed to prevent further decline and to protect future investigations and trials from preventable failure. Madam Deputy Speaker, I would like now to talk about prisons and the chronic underfunding that is failing both staff and those in custody. At the Justice Union's parliamentary group yesterday, I heard firsthand about the crisis in prison education. And according to Ofsted, 82% of prisons and young offender institutions are rated inadequate or requiring improvement for education, skills and work provision. Prison educators are paid less than their counterparts in the wider FE sector. The Education Select Committee warned in 2022 that poor pay, unsafe working environments and lack of respect have driven a recruitment and retention crisis. And this is unacceptable. Education is one of the most powerful tools for rehabilitation. Yet we are underfunding and undervaluing the very people delivering it. And the same is true of prison maintenance. Privatisation has been a costly failure. Basic repairs go unmet, squalor is widespread, and maintenance backlog is now estimated at nearly £2 billion. And I support the POA's Bring It Back campaign for insourcing prison maintenance. The promised biggest wave of insourcing in a generation must start here. In our crumbling prisons, where failed contracts have left dangerous and decaying conditions for both staff and prisoners. I also want to express my support to the POA's campaign on retirement age. Asking officers to work until they're 68 is such a high-stress, high-risk environment is simply unsustainable. 68 is simply too late. To conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, we are debating how to spend £18 billion in the Ministry of Justice, but money alone is not the issue. It's about priorities, because if the very foundations of justice are crumbling, then every other investment is undermined. The criminal justice system continues to fail innocent people. Chronic underfunding has rendered safeguards weak and ineffective. Leadership has been absent where it was most needed, and time and again the system refuses to admit when it gets things wrong. Miscarriages of justice are not tragic accidents. They are the inevitable consequence of a system that is under-resourced, poorly led and structurally resistant to scrutiny. Every wrongful conviction is not just a personal tragedy, it is a betrayal of our legal system and the value it claims to uphold, because justice denied to one is justice denied to all. So let us invest not just in buildings but in truth, not just in processes but in people, and above all let us put real justice, not convenience, not cost cutting, at the heart of everything the Ministry of Justice does. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.